You can start.
Let me start?
Yeah.
Good evening. Welcome to the May 21st meeting of the Lake Forest City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Honorable James Cowhey.
Here.
Alderman Novit.
Here.
Alderman Waldeck.
Here.
Alderman Moore.
Here.
Alderman Pandaleon absent. Alderman Tack.
Here.
Alderman Schoenheider.
Here.
Alderman Palmer.
Here.
Alderman Adelman.
Here.
8 present, 1 absent. Mr. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Bernie. Can you please join me in the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States. The swearing in of the second ward alderman. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, David Moore,
I, David Moore,
having been elected to the office of alderman
having been elected to the office of Alderman
of the city of Lake
of
Forest
the city of Lake Forest
in the county of Lake
in the county of Lake
and state of Illinois,
in the state of Illinois,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the state of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the state of Illinois,
and that I will discharge the duties of said office
and I will discharge the duties of Alderman
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, Alderman Moore. Thank you. Our Next item of business this evening is reports of city officers, the first being comments by mayor. I do have a number of items to report this evening. The first item is the appointment of James Held to the acting police chief. As the community may know, that our current police chief is retiring at the end of this month and taking a job in the private sector, and James is going to be our new acting police chief, and I know you've been with this department now for 27 years,
Yes.
so certainly not a newcomer,
No, I'm not.
and we appreciate your stepping up to this appointment, and we welcome, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions for our new chief? Thank you, and congratulations, and thank you
Well-
for all your support to all your other officers, both police and fire, that have come out this evening.
Mr. Mayor, we'll need a motion and a vote by the city
Sure.
council.
So moved. All in favor?
Second.
All right. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming up.
Thank you.
Our next item this evening is a proclamation in support of Lake Forest Day to be held on July 31st and August 1st, 2012. I do have a proclamation which I would like to read into the record, and then I will not forget to take the vote. So, first, the proclamation is whereas the McKinclock Post 264, the American Legion has undertaken to provide appropriate exercises and entertainment in celebration of Lake Forest Day on Wednesday, August 1, 2012, with a view to bringing together the people of our city in the furtherance of civic interest and advancement of community fellowship. And whereas the McKinclock Post 264, the American Legion honors Lake Forest residents, employees, neighbors, and friends by adopting the theme Lake Forest salutes the veterans of the Vietnam conflict. Therefore, be it hereby proclaimed that said Lake Forest Day celebration is declared to be a city fair in pursuance thereof, and Tuesday, July 31, 2012, and Wednesday, August 1, 2012, shall be observed as a holiday in the city of Lake Forest, with our people are urged to forsake the ordinary pursuits and gather in West Park in a spirit of comradeship and goodwill in support of the ideals of our city. I entertain a motion for approval of the proclamation.
So move for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, and we look forward to July 31st and August 1st. I'm sure the community does as well. That's always a fun time in Lake Forest. Our next item on the agenda this evening, we have the 2012 to 2013 new board and commission appointments and reappointments. And I will read these and certainly thank all the individuals as volunteers who step up on all of these boards and commissions. We did some at the last council meeting. This is, I believe, the remainder of the boards and commissions. Is that right, Bob? We have the Cemetery Commission. We have Colin Sylvester, who will be appointed as chairman. Under the Fire Pension, we have Patrick Lindeman as appointment as Ward 1. Gorton Commission, we have John Luby. Is it a reappointment from Ward 4? Historic Preservation Commission, we have Kurt Parents, a reappointment from Ward 1. Jim Preschlack, a reappointment from Ward 3. Bill Ransom, a reappointment from Ward 2. Mary Ellen Swenson, a reappointment from Ward 1. John Travers, an appointment from Ward 2. And the Parks and Recreation Board, we have Dan Jessica, an appointment from Ward 4. Paul Walker, an appointment from Ward 3. And Kurt Volkman is our new chairman from Ward 2. Under the Plan Commission, we have John Anderson, a reappointment from Ward 2. Jeff Kuchman, a reappointment from Ward 1. Michael Lay, an appointment from Ward 3. And Augie Ziccarelli, an appointment from Ward 4. Under the Police Pension, we have Jay Trees as a reappointment of Ward 4. And again, I'd like to thank all these individuals for volunteering and for stepping back up to help our community. And I'd also ask for an approval from the council for the new board and commission appointments.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Our next,
Mr. Mayor, can I
yes.
just ask, did that include also the addition of the housing trust member?
I was just going to bring that up.
Okay.
I didn't forget you. I got him on my other list, but I will include him as well. We have next on our list We have the announcement of the city council committees for 2012 to 2013, and I will read those as well. Standing committees for finance is George Pandaleon, chairman. All aldermen are included in the finance committee. Personnel, compensation, and administration. The mayor is chairman, Kent Novit and George Pandaleon. Under Public Works, we have Kent Novit as our chairman again, David Moore and Kathy Waldeck. Property and Public Lands, Don Schoenheider, our chairman, Stanford Tack, and Mike Adelman. On their city council liaisons, we have Business and Commerce, Mike Adelman. Under Finance, George Pandaleon. Legal Services, Kathy Waldeck. Parks and Recreation, Stanford Tack. Planning and Preservation, Don Schoenheider. Public Safety, Bob Palmer. Public Works, Kent Novit. Youth Services, David Moore. Audit Committee, George Pandaleon. Housing Trust, David Moore. And Tom Morsch, our former alderman, will be the new chairman of the Housing Trust. Also have the Senior Services, Kent Novit. Transportation Safety Enhancement Committee is myself. Lake Forest Trust is Mike Rummel, former mayor. Cultural Corridor Task Force, Kent Novit. And Ad Hoc Golf Advisory Committee, our Honorable Michael Adelman. I have another announcement, actually a couple more I'd like to make as well.
Mr. Mayor, not to interrupt you, but I will.
I'm sorry, we need a motion and we need an approval. I'm always forgetting those simple things like that.
It's just details.
Thanks.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for that, and thank you for catching that once again. You're worth every penny, Vic. I would like to announce, too, that the date of June 5th, we will have a train safety day. This is kind of a special arrangement that Union Pacific has put together. There will be a train, and Karina's going to put up some information as well, but I'll read you the details. The Union Pacific Railroad cordially invites you aboard its public safety outreach passenger train on June 5 and 6, 2012. The date actually in Lake Forest Station will be here on June 5th at 10:10, heading northbound from our downtown station. I believe it's going to go up to Kenosha, and it will be back here at approximately 11:40, so about an hour and a half train ride. This special train, which also commemorates the Union Pacific Railroad's 150th anniversary, provides a unique forum to learn about the Union Pacific Crossing Accident Reduction Education and Safety Outreach Program, or UPCARES. On board, you will learn about the program's efforts to decrease grade crossing, pedestrian and trespass incidents, as well as provide us an opportunity to improve the lines of communication with our valued community partners and customers. So again, this is on June 5th. If you wish to ride the train, they are asking to call ahead and RSVP. There's limited to about 100 individuals, and there is a website here. It's upsafetytrain@yahoo.com. They're asking if you would please do so by May 30th. And I know members of our Transportation Safety Enhancement Committee will be riding that train, as long as, my understanding, I got an email this afternoon, I think Susan Garrett's also going to join us. But this is quite a unique opportunity, and we've been working very closely with Union Pacific, and it's an opportunity for them to speak to us and have us for a good hour and a half and explain to us a lot about their program. Do you want to add anything, Karina, anything?
No, I think you
Okay.
summed it up quite nicely.
Okay, all right. But that's June 5th here in Lake Forest. Let's see. I think I have it. I believe that's it, Bob. The next item on the agenda would be comments by city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The first item under my report this evening is consideration of a recommendation to approve a master plan for Forest Park. I think I believe that with some certainty I can predict that everybody in this room this evening probably agrees on 2 points. Number one is that Forest Park is a spectacular piece of property and plays a large part in our heritage and our culture. Second is that I think everyone would agree that this has been a long and sometimes strange trip, but it's not over. And I will get into the details of what the next steps are if the master plan is indeed accepted by the City Council this evening. I'm going to try and keep my comments brief this evening because I know the City Council members have been following this closely for the last couple of years since you approved or accepted the conceptual plan. And also, you were able to enjoy the glorious weekend reading volumes and volumes of material that came from both the Park and Rec Board as well as the HPC Board. First, let me acknowledge really the hard work and passion by so many Lake Forest residents over the course of the past couple of months who have put an awful lot of blood, sweat, and tears into the plan that is before you this evening for consideration. Most notably, the Forest Park Project Board, the Friends of Forest Park who attended every meeting and had a lot of input and impact on the ultimate plan that's before you this evening. Certainly the Park and Rec Board and the HPC who, at the request of the City Council, reviewed this plan and gave, I think, very good feedback and thoughts and comments that will help mold the plan that's before you this evening. Certainly Mary Van Arsdale, Kathy Cerniak, and other staff members. And also the Lake Forest Garden Club, who, without their initial interest in this property, we wouldn't be here this evening, and I think they deserve an awful lot of credit of helping us get this far. Second, let me touch on that while the process may have seemed to be confusing and sometimes even debilitating, that I believe that the product that is before you this evening is an example of how the process in the end does work. It may not be a perfect plan, as I think I heard one of the commissioners of the HPC talk about, but it's hard to define what perfect is because we have 20,000 residents with 20,000 opinions, and to try and get 20,000 people to agree on anything is near impossible. But I think that the plan that is before you today has been a product of all of those public hearings, of all of the various comments, letters, correspondence that have come into place. And while we may not all agree on every aspect of the plan, I am completely convinced that at the end of the day, the community will embrace this project like it has embraced Market Square, like it has embraced Eloa, like it has embraced so many other projects in the history of the city of Lake Forest. Importantly, the action that you're being asked for this evening is twofold. One is to formally approve the master plan. The second component of that is to direct the city manager and the city attorney to begin working on an agreement that would then set forth the implementation of this plan now and into the future. The idea here and the concept here would be to craft an agreement not unlike what we had with the Market Square 2000 group, with the renovation of Market Square, that would lay out the procedures for taking it from tonight, working with the development of engineering drawings, design documents, bidding documents, the fundraising aspects of it, and also breaking down the cost structure and who would be paying for what. Up to this point in time, I know that there's been a number of people who said, well, there's no numbers attached to this, but quite candidly, it's very difficult to come up with a budget when you yet don't have a plan. And if the council does approve this evening, then we will be able to sit down collectively with the Forest Park Board, the 501c3, and to begin putting pencil to paper and coming up with exactly what those costs would be, bringing that agreement and that proposed budget back to the City Council at a later date, and then ultimately you would be signing off on that. One of the recommendations that we successfully implemented back with Market Square 2000, and we've also done this with Eloa and some other projects, is to allow a 501c3 to take the lead on the project and this not to be a public project. As the City Council knows, with the city being involved, there's an awful lot of state regulations that are come into play that increase the cost of any project, probably to the tune of about 20%. And so one of the things that we can look at is developing through this agreement that while we would still hold title to the property, while we would still control ultimately the work that is done on the property, making sure that any work that's done on the property is both consistent with the master plan as well as consistent with all ordinances and codes of the city of Lake Forest. We ultimately wouldn't be overseeing the work, and hence then we don't have many of the encumbrances that come with a public project under Illinois law. The final thing that I would just mention is that this is not the final step of the process. This merely allows us to take the next step, which is to further define how we're going to move forward, what the cost structure is going to be, develop that agreement that would ultimately come back to the City Council, and I think more importantly, allow the fundraising to begin. Because importantly, and I think the City Council is certainly aware of this, but it bears repeating, is that in the city's capital improvement budget, we have a placeholder of $100,000 set aside for Forest Park. But as we've done in other public-private partnerships, the City of Lake Forest agrees to generally take on those costs that we would normally be responsible for, the infrastructure costs. Things like storm sewers or sanitary sewers or water mains that would normally be the part of our practice, and we would upgrade those and rehabilitate those, much like we would anywhere else in the city of Lake Forest, whether on public property or in public right-of-ways. The balance of the cost of this would really be through the landscaping, the aesthetic improvements, and those things that, but for this project, we would not be undertaking at this point in time. And that's really how we have divided those costs over in past practices, and quite candidly has worked famously for the city of Lake Forest. All you have to do is look around this community and you can see example after example of public-private partnerships that have occurred that have allowed us to undertake capital improvements, to restore historic buildings, to restore historic sites, and at minimal to no cost to the taxpayers of Lake Forest. And while I thought that this was a very novel approach and really like to take a lot of credit for it, unfortunately, Gail Hodges reminded me in a PDF she sent me that this brilliant idea actually dates back to 1896 when the City Council did this with the original establishment of Forest Park. And they appointed park commissioners who went out and raised donations, who raised, donated landscape materials and labor to actually get the park put in place initially. So it's almost, we've come full circle, I guess is the best way here. And I think that at the end of the day, this is going to be a project that the community is going to embrace, much like they have with the beach project, with Eloa, and so many other projects we have in town. So the staff recommendation this evening is to strongly support the report, and I might emphasize the unanimous recommendation of both the Park and Rec Board and the HPC to approve the master plan and direct the city manager and the city attorney to begin drafting the agreement so that it could come back to the city council at some future date for your review and approval that would actually start the implementation of any improvements at Forest Park. With that, I'd like to pause and I'd like to introduce the chairman of the Forest Park Project Board, Ralph Gesualdo, who is here this evening, and ask him to come forward and make a few comments for the city council.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Mayor Cowhey. Congratulations, Alderman Moore. And thank you, Alderman, for letting me come in front of you tonight. The plan that you have before you tonight is the culmination of 2 years' work by the Forest Park Project Board. Our group consists of over 50 volunteers from our community working together to create the master plan. I would like to thank and recognize our executive board for the work that they have performed to date, and I'd be remiss if I didn't introduce or at least mention their names. Joan Dupre and Jane O'Neill are co-vice presidents. They're here tonight. Peter Cherry, our treasurer, he is also here tonight. Pam Bailey, secretary, here. Mark Goodman, legal counsel, is here. Michael Ebner, I think actually the first Historic Preservation Commission chair, and our Historic Preservation Commission chair committee is here tonight. Gail Hodges, at-large member. She's been instrumental in reminding us of the importance of the history of Forest Park. Paul Bergman, at-large member. Cliff Miller, landscape horticultural chair. Cliff, once again, has done tireless work on this. I think if it hasn't affected his business, I don't know how it hasn't. He's worked so hard. Tom Swarthout and Steve Douglas are co-chairs for engineering and technical. Judy Bogus, memorials and amenities. Prue Beidler, finance and fundraising. I think she has a lot of work ahead of her. Karen Stensrud, our current public communications chair. I'd like to thank them for their tireless work. The quality of our committee members have been remarkable. I think I made one comment at an HBC and Park and Rec meeting that why I'm in charge of the talent that's here, I have no idea. I would also like to thank Bob Kiley, Kathy Cerniak, Mary Van Arsdale, and their entire staffs for their work and input in this master plan. This public-private process has taken place way before the infrastructure items that he talks about that the city is willing to participate in. It's been going on for the last 2 years. The city input has been instrumental in us creating the master plan that we have here today. In addition, I'd like to thank both the Park and Rec Board and the Historic Preservation Commission for their suggestions, review, and most importantly, their unanimous approval of the Forest Park Master Plan. They helped create this master plan. The master plan that is before today serves as our comprehensive plan to guide the future designs about Forest Park, honoring the legacy of O.C. Simons and Alderman Hotchkiss and their influence upon the park, while acknowledging a century of change and the need for rehabilitation of the park to meet today's passive recreation needs. The plan emphasizes the importance of environmental responsibility, stewardship, and respect, most importantly, of the cultural landscape. The master plan has evolved since your approval 2 years ago of the conceptual master plan. It's a different master plan today, and more importantly, it's a better master plan today. And it became better because of the quality of the board members, the input from city, staff, Park and Rec, and Historic Preservation. Together, I think the plan that we bring to you today is a better representation of the community's wants and desires for Forest Park while honoring and respecting the historic significance of the park. If we are to receive approval tonight, our board is committed to working with city staff and creating the necessary document for our public-private partnership and moving forward with the implementation of the master plan. The expertise, experience, and knowledge that has been assembled on our Forest Park Project Board and committees will continue to work with city staff and residents, and most importantly residents, on the implementation of the master plan while being respectful to the history of the park. Once again, I thank you for coming in front of you tonight and await any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Back to me. Well, I just want to thank, again, I'd like to thank Ralph and your entire group, and frankly, the entire community, because this has been really an input from not just the Garden Club and Historic Preservation and all the input, but certainly not everybody, as Bob mentioned earlier, agreed with every aspect of this plan, but I think in the end the outcome is a good plan, and I think that it shows that the hard work on both sides of this have worked well for the community, as we've seen in other projects in the past, and this has been done going back, I didn't realize it was back to 1896, but so we're not that smart, huh? We're just picking up the pieces from the past, but it's a good plan, and I know there are folks here as well this evening that are on both sides of the issue. We again have gone through this now for well over 2 years. I'm happy to entertain anyone that wants to make a comment, but I would recommend that you keep it, to a short period of time. I'll get to you in one second, please. And that remember that we probably have heard everything that you may want to bring to us again this evening. It's either been said in one of the dozens of public meetings. So if you have anything new, obviously we'd like this may be that opportunity to bring it up. So, are there any public comment? Yes, sir. If you want to come on up and state your name and address for the record.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, my name is John Drummond. I live at 410 East Woodland Road. I'm not repeating what I've said before. I'm bringing up some new points here. I admit to getting distracted and spending too much of my time on visual criticisms of the park design regarding stone benches and picnic tables, paths and roadway configurations and historic context, and not enough time on the more important considerations such as project organization and control, construction budgets, and taxpayers' financial exposure. But none of these subjects have been discussed or expressed to the public. I suggest that you slow down, get your negotiation with the private group before you approve this plan. It's like building a house. You don't design the house and then let the contractor begin until you get a budget in place. You need to be in control of that process. The pretty pictures were a real distraction, not just because they made no practical sense to me, but because they really looked nothing like the familiar, relaxed quality of the park I have grown to love over the years. The real issue now before you is not just a park design, but a decision to give up city control of an historic public park to a private group just because they say that they'll raise the money for the improvements. Today, there is no construction estimate available, no budget, no limit to what the city will provide if the private group cannot secure adequate financing. More importantly, there is no ongoing mechanism for public participation. I suspect that there will be a severe public backlash from residents who suddenly ask, what's going on in our park? When city staff tells them to go talk to the Garden Club Project Board, I don't think it will be well received. This cannot be compared to the Market Square project, as that is a private commercial property with a small public space. This is a 10-acre public park solely for public enjoyment. I suggest that you take more time to ask more questions about control and management of this project before you give approval. What are the liabilities going forward? When you narrow the ring road and then cross it with multiple pedestrian pathways at various points, I suspect that a safety engineer would deem it less safe for pedestrians. Can the layout be changed after tonight's vote? Does the city take back management of the park after it's built? I have been unable to get answers to these very important questions. Please defer your note on this most important matter until these critical questions are resolved. Put the pretty pictures aside and address the harder questions which otherwise could come back to bite. Where's the public part to label public-private participation? For me, I hope it's not these past 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I would say I know that there has been talk about this idea of the public raising money for the last couple of years, and I would just remind everyone, I served with the Gorton folks who raised $3 million in the last year. You know, we live in a very unique community that a lot of people are able to contribute to their community, not just their time, but obviously their talent and their checkbooks to help make the community, you know, the beautiful place that we live in. So I guess that might be an argument for some other communities. I'm not sure that it really holds true for us in the unique position that we're in here. But I thank you for your comments as well. Anybody else who'd like to comment this evening? Yes, sir.
Dan Sebald, I live at 560 Ivy Court. I read through the document this afternoon, and I'd like to make some comments on a few things that I read. I'm going to go through as quick as I can and then maybe hit some of what I think are the major criticisms that I have. First off, I thought the master plan was very well done. First 10 pages I thought were excellent, that put the park in the context of the Great Lakes watershed. Generally, it's a very nice document. I thought it was weak in some cases, and I'd like to raise a few concerns. Let me get to the main concern right away, And one item that I think needs to, in my opinion, needs to be removed from this document is on page 22 regarding the structural soil parking area. The very last sentence on this page says that there can be space for 70 cars during peak summer park use. Now, I believe this is in the lawn area of the park. To me, 70 cars is extreme. Right now, I think at most 15 or so can fit in the lot. And if you look in the document, nowhere in these pictures do you see 70 cars on the lawn. And, you know, those things are kind of left out. So in my opinion, that's just way too much parking. You've got parking at the beach level that can be used. There's also the south parking lot. Another area that I thought was weak, I'm glad it's mentioned, it's on page 30. It's the stairway belvedere that leads down to the beach. So that's from the lawn area down to the beach. It does mention it's not very safe, and I agree with that. I don't think it can be patched, contrary to what this document is saying. I think that the stairs are too small and uneven, and it's just very unsafe. In my opinion, that whole stairwell needs to be redone. If you look at it from the beach level looking upward, I don't know if it's that appealing or not. It's kind of an odd design. And I don't know if that falls within this master plan or not, but I think it's something that can really be improved. One thing, I'm just amazed that in this document, it's used acro read to search through the document. Bicycle is not mentioned once in the document. There is pictures of a bicycle rack, but these bicycle racks are insufficient. And really, this park was created when there was carriages that were supposed to go through. The thing that came after the carriage was the bicycle. The bicycle's heyday was the end of the 19th century. Right now, there is bicycle parking near the stairwell, but I think it's insufficient. There's a lot of college students, there's a lot of children that park bicycles there. It can get quite full. I think that you can add bicycle parking, but you can maybe move it away from the stairwell a bit so that it doesn't crowd that area of the park. Some of the pictures the person previously mentioned, some of the pictures didn't match, and I agree with that. I didn't really care for having benches right on the walkway. I thought that was, I mean, the thing about this park is that you can look over the bluff. Who wants to have people walking in front of the benches if you're looking over the bluff? There was another picture had a path that's near the roadway, and right now that's just like a big lawn area. The path, I think, kind of gets a little too much into the center of the park where a lot of college students are playing football and there's picnicking and so on. So that was another concern. The trash receptacles, I didn't know where those were going to go. I would just say not to put them too close to the bluff because you get raccoons that dig through the garbage and you'll end up with a lot of trash in the bluff. And then the last comment was the bicycle rack on the last page. Just, it was a design that doesn't look very functional. So,
Thank you for your comments. Do we have any other? Yes, you want to come on up, please?
Hello. My name is Chris Fisher. I live at 906 North Green Bay Road. I have lived in Lake Forest for the last 35 years, And I lived in the JV Farwell house on Deerpath, which was only about 5 houses from the lake. And we raised our children there. Forest Park was our park, as it is all of our park, but we all have an emotional attachment to this space. We played there, we trained our dogs there. My husband practiced his fishing casts on the lawn there. Now we live on Green Bay Road, and our daughter and her family live in our old house. Our son has also chosen to move his family back to Lake Forest and lives on Woodbine Lane. It isn't surprising that another generation of my family is being raised here. It's a wonderful place to live. What is surprising, however, is that Forest Park is in such a state compared to our other city landmarks. Market Square, City Hall, the train station. In comparison, this park is unkempt, of hazard design, and is dangerous to walk a stroller through the ring road, as I have done many times. I urge you to accept this thoughtful, forward-looking plan for Forest Park. The aldermen who sat in your very seats in times past saw the need to revitalize our landmarks over the years. The projects were done with care and scholarship. This current plan meets that criteria as well. I would like to think that my grandchildren, who are spending their childhood here now, would be able to bring their children to Forest Park, a beautiful lakefront where it is safe to bike, stroll and picnic, and do all the things a park is meant to offer. Please make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments this evening from the public? Oh, yes, sir.
My name is Sandy Gannon. I live at 650 Northmore Road. And I won't go over all the reasons I think the proposed conceptual plan for Forest Park falls woefully short of what this community expects and deserves in regard to a rehabilitation plan for this historic well-loved site. Bob Kiley mentioned that the costs and how this is going to be structured from going on is the next issue. I hope you pay careful attention to that, because that's crucial, no matter what you think of the design. And let's get some firm written estimates right up front. Let's see a written budget and schedule. Are the real costs going to be more than anyone wants to agree to? Like the golf course at Fort Sheridan. Big change in direction once they got some hard numbers involved. Are we going to have 80% cash in hand before shovel hits dirt for any one of these elements? Not just rely on the good wishes of fundraising. Let's be careful how we structure this whole project. And what is the project structure going to be? Who's going to be project manager? All those details, they're boring but essential elements of any successful project. Everybody here knows how to do that. Let's be careful we do it very thoroughly. This project can become either a stellar project or a black eye for both the City of Lake Forest and the Garden Club, depending upon how specific design and financial issues are handled going forward. Please be very careful how you proceed. Lake Forest likes to be known as a special place. Please don't let it become known as a place of special interest. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other one from the public? Yes, I think we got time for one more. Very good. Come on up, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Rami Lopez. I live at 410 East Woodland Road. A few weeks ago, Jim Preschlack of the HPC asked if this plan was a reset or a polish, which is what the public was promised, just polishing the apple a light touch. He never got an answer, but this plan is clearly a reset. It creates more change and adds more cost. That said, this revised concept plan could improve if you gave the public some time to suggest some good ideas before you say yes. Here are a few examples. 1, create front-end parking in the south parking lot so that drivers can view Lake Michigan. 2, add a running path down to where O.C. Simons had a cul-de-sac at the far south end of the park. 3, save the park's oldest feature. The Deerpath path should not be demolished at its east end, nor should it be widened from 5 feet to 7 feet. Otherwise, so-called false history will occur and some of our oldest trees will be damaged. 4th, narrow Stimson's panoramic views so that a lot more trees are preserved on the bluff. 5th, move the path away from the sensitive bluff's edge to the inside of the park. The city's engineers went on the record in 2010. They wrote, quote, any type of development proposed to be located within the bluff setback area is discouraged or prohibited since it can hasten the instability of the bluff. Here are 5 things that I would suggest to see happen, what I'd like to see happen tonight. Number 1, delay this vote until the complete plan with all its components is prepared. If it is not a whole plan, then it should only be accepted conditionally on reading the entire idea. 2, delay this vote until you can tell us who will be in charge of coordinating all aspects of the park, from this master plan to pruning trees to creating new traffic controls. Identify the one person who knows what is anticipated or what has just happened throughout the park. Who will it be? Peter Gordon, Ramesh, Mary Van Arsdale, someone new? Who? Don't let it be somebody on the project board who has no responsibility to the public. 3, HPC recommended that their, quote, you have to listen carefully to this, be a process to implement the plan, incrementally allowing changes to be made slowly, and then evaluated as to their impact individually and collectively on the park, end quote. That sounds like we can get trees back once they come down, or we can rip out a path or a stone bench and its foundations after they go in. A statement like that is nonsense. Please clarify such statements before you vote. 4th, the certificate of appropriateness process should be reviewed for its thoroughness. Was there an application? Were standards reviewed for each structure and even alteration of landforms? Finally, the City Council should require, as HPC recommended, that the master plan clearly state that this park should be designed so that it continues to be part of the National Register of Historic Places. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. We have time for one more from the public, and then I do wish to bring it back to the council for their comments as well. So is there one more? Yes, if you want to come on up, state your name and address for the record, please. Oh, we have a duel here. Uh-oh. Flip a coin. You can make it quick.
My name is Winnie Crawford. My husband Bob and I live at 676 Lake Road. Our home looks directly into the park. We just want you to know that we are strongly in favor of the plan, and we hope that you will approve it. It's a beautiful plan, and we think it will work well, and we're just in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Yes, we have one more, please.
My name is Christine Sequeira. I live at 540 Mayflower. Please only restore the forest park ecologically, affordably, simply, and historically. True, the ring road needs resurfacing, as do many other streets in Lake Forest. But at the meeting in 2011 at Gorton, the city engineer said the base of the road was solid and good and only needed resurfacing. It still is, despite all the heavy road building equipment that was parked there during the building of the road ramp to the boat parking, and the heavy rollers in 2011. Plus all those heavy tree cutting trucks parked there in January 12, right in the puddles. You know, all it needs is some landscaping to get rid of those puddles. And it's been neglected for the past 20 years. The City of Lake Forest website said that Lake Forest is an affluent city, and the budget for 2013 increased only 2.9%, closer to 3% from last year. Not everyone in Lake Forest is affluent, and not all who are want the overhaul of Forest Park. So many families are saving for the education of their children, supporting their churches, etc. What will be the cost of overhauling Forest Park to the taxpayers? What about the taxpayers that keep hoping the city will slow down, even stop needless expenses? Who would like to spend or save or donate their own dollars rather than send them all to the city to spend on things they are against? Please spare Forest Park. A few low-cost temporary speed bumps, well placed, will not damage a resurfaced road, and it will spare the park from cutting up the lawns for paths, if there really is a safety concern. They cost $18 on up. They don't take up the whole width of the road, and people can still walk and bicycle past them. They can be removed if necessary, with no damage to the road. So many people in Lake Forest appreciate the park as it is and don't want this makeover. It's beautiful, it's quiet, and what about all the noisy landscaping that will be required with these new plans? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I'd like to bring it back to the council now for any question or comments by the council. Yes, Michael?
Questions and comments? I'll try and go through it as quickly as possible. First of all, I'd like to praise everybody who's been involved in the process, those for and those in opposition. It's since last Wednesday night when HPC approved this and I realized it was coming to City Council tonight, I've spent hours on YouTube watching all the prior public hearings. I've read through all of this material, and what becomes stunningly evident is the expertise of everybody involved, even those opposed, as well as those who make up the Forest Park Board. So I take my hat off to all of you for all the time you've put into it, and particularly the Lake Forest Garden Club for assembling such a stellar panel. I took a visit down to Glencoe, where I grew up. Glencoe also has a park above the beach. It's about half the size and acreage. Got a magnificent oak grove there, which reminds me a little bit of our Middle Fork Savannah. Not quite as big, but it's the second most impressive oak grove I've ever seen. What distinguishes our park from Glencoe's in part is that Glencoe has their parking above, on the top of the bluff, one at the north end, one at the south end of their park. They also have tennis courts in there that I remember from 50 years ago that are overgrown with moss and are more of a landscape element now than they are functionally. But I looked at Glencoe. They had no road. They had no ring road. They did have footpaths, and they had footpaths pretty close to the bluff. And they did their restoration back in 1996. So it gave me a little bit of a benchmark to compare our vision here with what they did down there. And you know, we're magnitudes above them with the potential to create a masterpiece here. We've got a beach that's incomparable to all the other beaches in the North Shore. We've got the senior center, City Hall, Market Square. I was at Ellowa Farm listening to John Mariani 2 weeks ago. That's a little gem. Forest Park does not measure up presently to the other gems we have in this city. And if we simply did a preservation or restoration of Forest Park back to what it was 100 years ago, it's my personal opinion, it still wouldn't measure up to the other amenities we have in this town. This master plan, and it's just a master plan, and I didn't anticipate it to have budgets or timelines. It's a framework within which to work. And it is a guiding light that gives us the potential to have a park that is of the stature of the beach, Elliwa Farm, the other assets we have in this town. So I support this. I have concerns. My first concern is it shouldn't become a burden, a financial burden, to the taxpayers in this town. We're going to have to fund infrastructure, unquestionably. We've already shown how much we've invested in human resources, and there's a real cost to human resources. But I want to make sure we put the proper constraints in place that this doesn't ever become a financial burden to the taxpayers. And I think that's a concept that this was premised on to begin with. And without getting into technical details, we can require financial security every step of the way. An element comes before HPC and then to City Council for approval. We can have the proper financial safeguards in place, just like we do with private developers, that they're not going to get halfway through the project and then we're left holding the bag. That's simple to do. That's administrative. So that's my first and foremost concern, is the financial burden inadvertently falling back in the city's lap. We have to do whatever's possible, and I leave it to Vic and to Bob to figure out what we have to write into your agreement that you're going to craft so that that doesn't happen. My second concern was the road. To be honest with you, my personal preference is I'd rather not see a road there. A road may have been appropriate 100 years ago for carriages and horses. I don't know why we need a road there. We've got ample parking down below at the north end. There's parking down below at the south end. We've got parking on top at the south end. I think it'd be nicer if we didn't have the ring road, but I know that was a controversy, and I don't know what the pros and cons of your analysis were when you ultimately decided to leave the road in, but I'm not going to second guess that. I'm just expressing my personal preference. And then my last concern is function over form. I think the materials you selected are very pleasing. I don't know if you can ergonometrically contour a limestone bench, but I think the benches have to be comfortable. The last thing I'd hate to see is people coming to use the park and you can't sit on those benches. So I'm a function over form kind of person. That's my last concern. Other than that, I think you've done a stellar job. I think my job is to look out for the long-term best interests of the city. HPC's done a great job. Park and Rec's done a great job. Garden Club, Forest Park Board, and again, those of you in opposition, you've helped raise the bar, and your efforts are sincerely appreciated.
And Mike, I join with you in support for approval of the plan. To be honest with you, the considerations I've had for the plan kind of take me beyond what I'd consider to be my comfort zone. I truly want to please everyone, and I think this is a plan that, given an opportunity, can please not only the people in the room today, but we have an obligation to please the people 100 years from now. The Forest Park Plan, when it was first created, and O.C. Simons took the first step in creating a vision for this park that was a gift to the community back in the late 1800s and early 1900s. But the city failed, and past councils have failed, because there was no plan created to continue the maintenance of this park. It was let go for a 100-year span. And thankfully at this point, we're embarking on not an ending point today, but actually a starting point for a reinvigorated Forest Park. We're creating a plan. We're taking the stewardship of the park back, so it's not going to be just randomly planted with trees, randomly placed with different benches, or enhanced in different ways, but we're going to give this as a gift to future generations of persons in Lake Forest. So again, it's not an end today. This isn't something where we're rubber stamping, but we're really gaining momentum. This is where we're breaking out of the starting gate. This is where hopefully momentum will be gained and the race begins. So again, it's all on how you view this. There's a positive aspect to this that we could all take. The plan itself, it's outlived certain members of people that I've enjoyed company with in council and then city boards. But their input has gone into this. And when the plan was first unveiled 2 years ago, it was drastically different. And certainly the opinions that have come forth from this community have contributed to make this what I consider to be a plan that should be acceptable to everyone in this room. You've all contributed. Not everyone's getting 100% what they wish, but they could look at that plan and say that certain input, certain comments that they had created a better plan for all in the community. There is going to be oversight on this. I think that the public as a whole shouldn't have distrust for city council or the city management that we're simply going to let this thing go. We want to see this park be perfect. We want to see it as a gift to the community. It's nothing that we're going to allow go out of control. Funding, the base aspect and the base part of this plan is we're partnering with a private organization to help fund this park, and it will be implemented in stages. It's not going to just go in 1 week, 1 month. There's going to be different parts of this project that are going to come forward. And in all honesty, likely there may be aspects of this plan as they go forward that might not be something that fits, but we can change and we can evolve, but there has to be a plan moving forward. This is a starting point. I ask everyone in the council at this point to endorse this plan, this starting point. Thanks.
Well, I agree with Ken's comments and Mike with your comments as well. I think, very simply put, that this is a great, great opportunity for the city of Lake Forest. And it's an opportunity to preserve what that park has always been, which is a place of quiet and passive enjoyment, and to enhance it, to bring it into the future, to meet our current needs and to meet our future needs. And this part, it's a lot about not so much what has been done in the last 50 or 60 or 100 years, but what hasn't been done. There's a lot that hasn't been done, and we have an opportunity to do it now. I do have a couple questions and or comments, and one question I have, and maybe I'm missing something, but if we approve the plan and we move forward with this process and the fundraising begins, I'm just a little unsure about the implementation. For example, do we fundraise and then say, well, first, what are we going to do first? Well, maybe we're going to fix the ring road. Maybe that's a logical place to start. So do we fundraise for that aspect first, or do we try to raise money for everything? And what happens if we fix the ring road and then we run out of money and we can't raise enough money to fix something else? And
those are all very good questions, and I can only give you, based on past experiences, some of the conditions and some of the safeguards that we've put in place under past agreements. For example, when we did Market Square, we required that 75% of the funds be on hand before we even broke ground. In that situation, though, it really was one project. You couldn't start tearing up the road or the sidewalks unless you did the whole thing. I think in this case, it's going to be very interesting and very different. We'll probably come back to you with some recommendations, because while the bulk of the improvements will be made through private donations, for example, if the Waldeck family wanted to donate $1 million, we could put the road in, and we wouldn't have to do anything else either. And so I think that different components, and I don't want to get out ahead of Prue Beidler, because she certainly knows this business a lot better than I do, but I think there will be certain components of the park that will be marketed as opportunities for people to donate And therefore, when those dollars come in, then those components can be undertaken, whether you have all the money or you have 50% or 25%. And so I think that's sort of what we're going to have to look at. Ideally, you don't want to be working on the park over a 7-year period of time and tearing it up and doing this and doing that. So I think the timing will be something that we as a community and we as a city council are going to have to be discussing as we go forward. I don't know if that answered your question or just confused it even more.
No, it does.
Okay.
It does. And then I have a comment. One thing that I did struggle with, and I'm not really sure that I'm very comfortable with, is the parking, the overflow parking. That inside, it does appear that the plan states that on certain busy days of the year, there would be, say, 70 cars parked on the grass inside the ring road. I don't think that's a great idea.
Well, let me, because I think people fail to understand how things are happening right now. And clearly, and I think this goes with any project we have in the city of Lake Forest, is that we don't plan parking for Christmas and Easter. We look at what are the primary needs, and then there's going to be a half a dozen days through the course of the year that there's going to be a lot of people down there. You know, 4th of July weekend, really warm weekends, maybe July, August, June. But generally, based on our experience, it's probably less than half a dozen. Right now, the primary lot that is used first is the North Beach lot. Then we use the south lot up on the Forest Park, on the south side of Forest Park. Then we park cars right now along the ring road. And then the final use is the lot on the south side, what we would call the boaters lot, down at the beach on the south side. The discussion now is that we would reverse that, and I'm going to ask Mary Van Arsdale to just yell out if I misspeak, but we'll continue to do the North Beach lot first, because that's always the primary lot that people like to use. Then we will use the South Lake Forest Park lot, and then we would use the boat lot, and then we would park in the ring road area. And there are, under this plan, you saw that there are some spaces for both pull-off as well as handicap parking. And I think, like the council knows, parking is an ongoing issue that we have, whether it's at Forest Park or some of our other parks or even in downtown Lake Forest. And I think we're going to have to monitor that situation. The plan will identify, here's where we can add parking spaces if need be. But I think going, to Alderman Adelman's point, the original concept was to try and pull the parks out of the center of that, pull the cars out of the center of that park, and to open that up more to pedestrian, to bicycle use, and so forth. And so that's still our intent, but I think, we're just going to have to see how it works, and if we have to massage it over a period of time, then it will be coming back to the city council for those kinds of discussions and considerations.
And Bob, just along those lines, there are several days out of the year that the parents are all parking on the lawn at Deerpath Middle School when conferences are held at the beginning of the school year. West Park, twice a year for Lake Forest Days, we park on the lawn. West High School campus football games, 5-6 games a year, we're parking on the lawn, and it works out just fine. It's not going to be often.
Any other comments from council members?
Yeah, I'm good. I don't usually prepare things, but it's been, because of my prior time in HBC, it's been about 2.5 years. So I'll just read what I've prepared here. I've been part of the Forest Park process since the first public meeting reviewing the plan of the Historic Preservation Commission prior to becoming an alderman and city council. The changes apparent in the current plan have addressed almost all the issues first identified by the concerned public. Some of these issues were the ring road, the limestone amphitheater, north and south parking lot expansions, and the cost to the city. We owe special thanks to those passionately involved for these improvements. By having Parks and Recreation Board and the Historic Preservation Commission work together, we have a design that now addresses the use, the aesthetic, the maintenance, and the historic character of the park. I must also point out that many of the detractors of the revised plan are directly responsible for the plan's improvements. There are many that are still unhappy, but there needs to be a point where we recognize that perfect can be the enemy of good, and forward progress is needed for any level of success. I would like to commend Ralph Gesualdo and the rest of the Forest Park Board, as well as the Friends of Forest Park, for the resulting plan. It will be important to bring back to the public, through boards and commissions, any implementation of the plan not specifically and exactly detailed in the master plan. Signage, hardscape, tree removal, maintenance techniques, and additions and subtractions of fixtures are examples of park elements that should have an oversight beyond that of a more traditional park. Historic preservation would be a good venue for some of those elements. I would like to suggest at this point, and perhaps for implementation at a later date, that the city develop an authority for landscapes within its boards and commissions, including it within a current board, or having a list of go-to landscape professionals that might be part of a recurring ad hoc committee should suffice. I feel that it was a specific gap or overlap in authority that sent all involved into a defensive mode and led in some part to much of the frustration over the process. I think that the Forest Park landscape group will be in place for taking this project farther. In summary, I feel that we have come a long way, and I support the current direction. I also feel that the reasonable conditions set forth by the Historic Preservation Commission should be conditions of support, as guidelines, if nothing else, to make sure that things move in the right direction. Those are my comments, and I'd really like to thank everybody involved. And Ralph, that was a tremendous document. A lot of effort went into that.
Thank you, Alderman Moore. Any other comments from council members?
I'd just like to acknowledge the effort that everybody put into this. To paraphrase Winston Churchill, never have so many done so much for one park. And it's just been really impressive to go through this. So thank you all.
Yeah, for me personally, I came to this fairly late, just really the last month or so. And again, like these folks, I'm very impressed by the amount of work and the amount of history that goes into all this. I learned a lot in trying to bring myself up to speed. I have some of the same concerns that people here have, or some of the people who presented, particularly the issue of cost estimates and phasing of the project with monies on hand prior to proceeding. And it's my sense from listening to you that that is the plan. I didn't really see it written that way, which made me a little bit uncomfortable as I went through this, because we're all familiar with projects that sound really great and they're very exciting in the beginning. And I built one of those out in Taos, New Mexico, and as it went along, it got a lot less exciting. Anyway, so, for me, although I'm very comfortable in principle with the project, I don't like every part of it, but I think a little bit of it's overdone, a little over-engineering maybe. I think it's worth pursuing as long as that phasing and making sure that the funds are available before anything is started, so that nothing is left halfway, that nothing's left for the city to pick up that we hadn't planned on picking up. I also have a little bit of concern, and I know we have a history with this. With baseball parks now, we build them and we give somebody naming rights to it. And I'm always concerned when we go out to ask people for large sums of money to do things that, as I see it, is a gift to the city. That there is, in return, Buerger Park rings a bell to me. I don't like to see things like that, and although I think it's very important to acknowledge people who certainly give of their time and their substantial assets, that be put in proper context for something like this, which truly is going to be, as I understand it, developed privately and gifted back to the city to manage responsibly. So in that context, I'm a supporter of the project as I understand it.
Mr. Mayor, I'm just going to make one comment, and I'm not going to repeat a lot of good remarks that have been brought up both by the public and by the council, but to reiterate Alderman Novit's comment, this is just the beginning. We're kicking it off. It's exciting. What this park has been, I think a lot of us would agree, and people have said it tonight, it's not been great lately, and it has so much opportunity to be great again. And tonight's an opportunity for us to start that, and it will be great again. And it's terribly exciting, and for everyone that's been involved and everyone that's spent so much time, all of us from the bottom of our hearts, thank you. But we're so excited about where this will be, and I'm very confident that this community and this staff will manage this process, and we'll have a great result. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. And again, I'd like to thank the community and everyone that's worked on this project over the last couple of years. And having heard all the comments, both from the public and now from the council, I'd entertain a motion to further this project.
And
Before we start the motion, I'd like to add the recommended motion. I'd like to add the HPC's recommendations, if you wouldn't mind, or I can if you want to.
yeah, I mean, HPC's recommendations, I think at this point, we are taking
As guidelines
into account.
Yes.
Well, actually, you could break them up into 2 points. One is the certificate of appropriateness, and
All 8.
that just goes unless there's an appeal to the process, and those just become a part of the encumbrances, if you will, that are on the development. With respect to the recommendations, the first 3, those will probably be addressed in the draft agreement that you're going to see about the implementation and so forth. I'm sorry, first 5. I guess 3 or 4 of those first 5, not including number 5, the signage plan, which I think everybody knows has to go back to the HP at some point in time. But the first 4, I think, will be dealt with in the agreement that you'll be seeing in the future.
Can I ask one, like, tiny, really nitpicky question? Vic, maybe you can answer this. Will someone, or will you or someone read through the master plan and just correct, there are some misspellings and some typos, and like I think one place the word cited, S-I-T-E-D, was used, and it should have been with a C or vice versa, I can't remember. I mean, it's overall wonderfully written, but just do you?
Yes,
at
the
some
city
point
manager
correct
and
those
I. Is there a police officer in the house?
All blame falls on Cliff Miller. Ooh, Cliff.
Alderman Waldeck, we actually were discussing that because the time between the HPC's recommendation and tonight didn't allow a full opportunity for the petitioners to reorganize that master plan and make the final revisions. What the city manager and I were discussing is that the agreement will actually have as an exhibit the final plan with its pieces all in the right places. So we'll take care of it at that time. The council will have one last chance to see it, and we hope that that will, for everybody's sake, know exactly what the final version was as it was recommended by the HPC, so it's something that's a single document.
So the agreement that you and Bob are going to craft for step 2 is going to come to us
For approval.
review and approval.
That's correct.
Can we have more than just a weekend to read it?
Yes.
No. Oh.
How about a long weekend?
Yes,
Yes,
Mike,
you'll have plenty of time.
It's not done now. It's going to come back to you. That being said, I move to approve the Forest Park Master Plan and direct city manager and city attorney to prepare an agreement with the Forest Park Project Board relating to the implementation of the master plan.
And if it's okay, and please use the 5 recommendations as guidelines from the HPC.
With that added.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
I'll second.
We have a second? I'll second.
We have a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Schoenheider.
Aye.
Alderman Tack. Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
Alderman Adelman. 7 yeas, no nays, motion carries.
Thank you, Bertie. Our next item on the agenda this evening is comments by council members. Any additional comments? Yes.
The Golf Classic tournament comes up Friday, June 1st. There's still some foursomes available. For the Brett Jackson Classic.
Okay. Any other comments by council members? No? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a Public Works Committee Alderman Novit.
Okay, and the first item on the Public Works Committee agenda would be a request to waive the bid process to purchase. Maybe it will take a second just to.
I can't believe everybody's not sticking around to talk about recycling carts.
What about
One
the
is just
sewer line?
beginning.
Is that what's next, the sewer line?
Yeah.
Oh, carts are next. How did I miss that?
I think a lot of these people wanted the 95-pound recycling bins. I'm really disappointed. Yeah, the others. Well, this might be a good time to come back to the Public Works Committee items. The first item would be a request to waive the bid process to purchase 35-gallon and 65-gallon recycling carts. We did discuss this earlier at the Public Works meeting and at the Finance Committee meeting. It was presented by Mike Thomas. I'm not sure if Mike would want to, at this point, have any further comment on it.
I would like to make a comment, though. I'd like to recognize Mike Knab, who is a representative from Schaefer Systems, who I believe came all the way from Charlotte, North Carolina to be here this evening, which just shows the dedication from Schaefer and the manufacturer of the carts. I think, my opinion is they're probably the best cart in the market, and it just shows his dedication to making sure that we get through our process, and that I know he's worked very well with Michael Thomas in Public Works, and we're very thank you for coming out, and thank you for all your assistance in getting our implementation of our recycling program going.
And I just wanted to make sure there was comment that part of this is funded by a $100,000 grant from the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. So again, congratulations to city staff on finding ways to stay within budget to fund programs with outside funds.
And finding ways to get money from the state of Illinois. That's pretty darn good. So we thank you for that as well. Any other questions or comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion to waive the bid process and to approve the additional carts.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, wait, we do that one, and then you want a roll call vote? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Schoenheider.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
Alderman Adelman.
Aye.
7 yeas, no nays, motion carries.
Thank you, Bertie. Our next item on the agenda is opportunity for citizens to address the city council on non-agenda items. Ann Whipple, I erred in forgetting to mention you earlier about the community partnership, and if you want to come on up and take this opportunity to do that, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. Mayor Cowhey asked me to just give you a brief update on the Community Task Force this evening. As you know, in light of the recent tragedies that we've had here in our community, as of March, a group of community leaders came together to assess the types of support systems we have in the mental health area for our families and youth in the community. And I'd like to read just a portion of it. Leadership of both Northwestern Lake Forest Hospital, the City of Lake Forest, Village of Lake Bluff, and Lake Forest High School have come together and have really moved the task force in a very positive direction. On June 7th, there will be a community assessment of the types of interventions and resources we have, and Northwestern Lake Forest Hospital has really stepped up to the plate and offered Dr. Mark Reinecke, who is the head of the Division of Psychology at Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine. His specialty is teen depression and suicide, and will be leading the discussion. We will be bringing in a research team from Johns Hopkins University. They will be retained to conduct a workshop to examine our local framework and the school community partnerships, current resources, and their impact on our student and youth, as well as family mental health. So this is really just the first step for the task force. On June 7th, as I mentioned, 100 representatives from across all types of walks of life have been invited, professionals from the law enforcement area, mental health professionals, students, parents, leaders in the community. And then once the assessment is made, the next step will be made to see where the gaps are and the types of things that we'll be recommending, but working very closely with Northwestern Lake Forest Hospital in this area. And as I say, thanks to the City of Lake Forest, Village of Lake Bluff, and Lake Forest High School for funding and for really kicking off the first action step for the task force.
And do they have a mention of where that meeting's going to be held?
Thank you. It's going to be at the Lake Forest Graduate School, and they are giving us the space for that initial meeting too. So.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very
and
much.
Thank you for making the report. Any other opportunity for the public this evening? No. We'll move on to our next item on the agenda, which is our omnibus vote consideration. There are 5 items on there. We did review most of these, I believe, at the Finance Committee earlier. I'll just read them and then ask for your either take one all or as you wish. Board of Lake Forest share of the 2012 Joint Annual Sewer Lining Project, the approval of Town Line Community Park Playground Project, the approval of the citywide street tree inventory, award of Lake Forest Police Department uniform bid, and the approval of the May 7, 2012 City Council meeting minutes. Any questions or comments here from the council?
I move to approve the omnibus, whatever.
Second?
Have a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Schoenheider.
Aye.
Alderman Tack. Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
Alderman Adelman.
Aye.
7 yeas, no nays, motion carries.
Thank you, Bertie. Our next item on the agenda this evening is ordinances. The first being a consideration of a recommendation from the Plan Commission in support of a tentative plat approval for a 6-lot subdivision, the Spiel subdivision on property located in the north side of Wesley Road, west of Green Bay. Approval of a motion granting tentative plat approval. And Kathy Cerniak is going to present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. You did receive a report on this during your Finance Committee, but very briefly, this is a recommendation to you from the Plan Commission for tentative plat approval of a subdivision proposed for a 10-acre property located on the north side of Wesley, west of Green Bay Road, long time owned by the Spiel family. This is tentative approval, so if you approve this tonight, that will give direction to the project team to move forward, do detailed landscape work, detailed engineering work. I will note that one neighbor is in the audience and is interested in being involved in that landscape and engineering work as it goes forward. There are a number of conditions of approval that will be addressed over the next year. In your packet, I believe they begin on page 44. And if you choose to do so, again, tentative approval, you would approve that by motion. And then this matter, once final, would go back to the Plan Commission and then come back to the City Council. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, again, we did review this earlier this evening. Any other questions for Kathy?
I have a quick one. There's enough acreage to make 6 lots within this. So is it a variant, do they need a variance to make smaller lots and they have the open spaces?
Because this property is in the Historic Residential Preservation Open Space District, any subdivision within that area requires a special use permit. Through the special use permit, creating lots that are smaller than the 1.5 acres in order to preserve open lands or historic features is permitted, and the approval to do that is granted through the special use permit. So no, there are no variances.
Is the special use permit a sort of variance or not really?
The special use permit gives special authorities beyond what is permitted outright in the code. And in fact, properties within the planned preservation overlay district require approval through a special use permit process, specifically to allow modifications in sizes, in lot sizes, and setbacks, for the purpose of preserving natural resources, conserving open space, and preserving historic resources.
Any other questions for Kathy? If not, I'd entertain a motion granting tentative plat approval.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Our next item on the agenda this evening is a consideration of a report and recommendation from the Zoning Board of Appeals in support of a variance from the lot in depth setback requirements for property located at 1137 North Green Bay Road. This is a first reading and, if desired by the City Council, final approval. This is presented by Goran Radovanovich, our planning intern, and Megan O'Neill, our planner.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I will briefly review a request for approval for a lot in depth setback variance for the property located at 1137 North Green Bay Road. And if I get this right, the property is located just north of Laurel Avenue and off of Green Bay Road. And it is accessed through this private drive, which is also shared by 3 other properties. And because it does not face a public street, it is subject to the city's lot in depth ordinance. It has some additional setback requirements than a regular R3 district. And in this particular case, that would be 40 feet from all property lines. Because the existing house was built before this ordinance was enacted, this property is basically non-conforming because parts of the existing house to the north of this thick dashed line are in that non-conforming setback zone. The request is to approve an addition, which is highlighted in those shaded areas, which will allow to further encroach into the non-conforming area, which will come as close to 18 feet to this northern property line. Given the location of the addition in the back corner of the existing house, little or no change will be perceived from the street or neighboring properties. The Zoning Board of Appeals unanimously voted to recommend the approval, and there have not been any objections from the public about this variance. The recommendation is to waive the first reading and grant final approval for the ordinance on page 53.
Any questions for Goran? Comments? No? I'd entertain a motion for approval granting, this is the first reading at desired by the City Council, final approval. So the first one would be a motion to waive.
Move to waive first reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And if desired, final approval?
And motion to grant final approval.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Schoenheider.
Aye.
Alderman Tack. Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
Alderman Adelman.
Aye.
7 yeas, no nays, motion carries.
Thank you. Goran, nice job. You did your first one. You can relax now, unbutton the collar. There you go. Our next item on the agenda this evening is a consideration of an ordinance regarding the use of wires, telephones, and electronic devices while driving. And this is a final reading.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. You may recall that the council has approved first reading of this ordinance. Actually, I think at the same meeting, there was a motion to approve second reading that did not pass that evening. And there was a lot of discussion at the time of holding this to see what the state would do with respect to a statewide ban. The House did pass a bill that would impose a statewide ban on the use of cell phones, again exempting out hands-free fixtures. But that was sent over to the Senate and has currently been stymied in the Senate Transportation Committee. So staff is bringing this back this evening for consideration of second reading of the City Council. Really the only outstanding question that remains in the ordinances before you this evening is when is the effective date of the ordinance going to be? When will we put it in place? Susan Banks reminded me that we have a dialogue going out literally tomorrow or very shortly, and so we won't be able to put any information in that dialogue. We could set mail separate information to the residents, alerting them to this new rules and regulations. So it really depends on how much time you feel we need to give the residents so that they can be apprised of this new regulations if you were to approve the ordinance on second reading. So whatever the pleasure of the council is with respect to that date, you could probably at the earliest, I would say, do 1st of August. That would be fairly aggressive. That September or October, we would then we could accelerate the time that we put out the dialogue or do a separate mailing if we wanted to do that as well. So whatever the pleasure of the council might be. I should also add that I think there is still an outside chance that the Senate is still in session until May 30th, that they could act. But I think we've talked about the fact that even if the state was to pass an ordinance or pass a code prohibiting use of cell phones, that we would also want to adopt our own local ordinance so that these could go through the administrative hearing officer. I think the worst that would happen if you were to adopt this evening is that there might be some minor differences between the state law and our own ordinances, but we could bring those back at a later date for tweaking if necessary.
And my position is what it always has been, that this is really, I think, the province of the state. And what we really need, and I hope that we get, and I would support telling the state that we should get, is a uniform law across the state of Illinois, because what we have now is this kind of hodgepodge patchwork of laws throughout our state. And it sort of boggles my mind that I can legally make a cell phone call in Highwood and I have to hang up my phone in Highland Park, but I can pick it up again when I get to Glencoe. And when I get to Evanston, they're even discussing passing an ordinance there that prohibits even hands-free devices, because a lot of studies show that there's really, it's not any safer. That any talking on the phone is not safe. So it's confusing. It's confusing for me as a resident of this state, and I can't imagine how confusing it is for people who come from elsewhere into our state, how they can possibly navigate it. I think it's unfortunate that the state hasn't acted. I wish they would act, but in the absence of their action, I can't support passing this ordinance. And my second concern is that I hope that this isn't solely a means or primarily a means to gain revenue. And I know it generates a lot of revenue in other communities. I know it generates it in Evanston. I know it generates a lot of revenue, but I'm concerned about creating some bad feelings on the part of our residents and our citizens towards our police department. I'm concerned with our residents saying, don't the police have something better to do? And I think that they could, frankly, be focusing on things other than writing someone a ticket for using their cell phone. And I think that if people start to see the police as more of a tax collection agency than a crime prevention agency, that's going to perhaps create some hard feelings on the parts of our citizens. So. Those are my concerns. I would support option 1, which is formally recommending to the state that they move ahead with this and educating our public But in the absence, and it's certainly if the state were to pass a law, then by all means, there would be no reason not to pass an ordinance at that point. Why shouldn't we have an option of getting some of the revenue there? But in the absence of that, I have a hard time supporting this.
Well, I'm not going to repeat my comments from before, including "I told you so" about the state not doing anything. I think it's good legislation, and the perfect may be the enemy of the good. Better to get something good and wait for something perfect. And as far as consistency, as someone once said, consistency is the last refuge of the unimaginative. So I would make the motion to adopt for the final approval.
Can I, before we get into that, this would be a question of when we would like to implement the ordinance. And there was a suggestion that possibly we delay until August 1st, September 1st, before we make this law, in hopes that Illinois might pass, or it might get through the House, so we'd have a standardized ordinance with the rest of the state, which would allay Kathy's fears. But again, the school year is coming up. August, I think it was said, is aggressive, but maybe we should make the beginning of the school year a time where we could enact this. I'd be pushing for an August 1st date to enact the ordinance if the state can't pull it together.
And I'd be willing to support a September 1 date to allow us to get the word out to the residents.
Oh, you're just a little non-aggressive.
I'm not aggressive. I will push over.
No, but I agree with the September 1st date if the state can't enact its own law at this point. And again, it's disappointing, especially we have a state who is faced with all types of pension obligations to improve. If they can't pass an ordinance banning cell devices or handheld devices, God help them in curing the pension crisis.
But they did get us a grant for our carts.
True. But I'd agree with your motion, but based on a September 1st date.
I'd like to comment on it since it haven't had that opportunity. I agree 100% with Kathy. I think it's ridiculous to have patchwork laws like this. And I'm particularly concerned with the idea of using police departments as revenue generators, particularly in light of the recent announcement that we're now going to have speed cameras in construction zones along with red light cameras, all of which I think is just gutless revenue generation at the expense of people who are just going to work and doing what they do every day. So I can't support this unless the state decides to make a uniform law. And if we can pass the ordinance after the fact so that some revenue comes out of it if the law is in place, I'm certainly not opposed to that, but I can't support it.
Well, that's why Heinz makes 57 varieties, I suppose. And the last thing in the world I think of in connection with this proposed ordinance is the revenue it would generate. I think of the potential human lives and mayhem that are precluded. I don't think issuing a DUI citation is done for the sake of generating revenue. It's because DUI drivers are lethal weapons, and maybe not to such an extent, but I think getting close to it are distracted drivers operating their cell phones behind the wheel of a lethal weapon. So I support it. I'm not willing to wait for the state to get off their bums. The city of Chicago enacted one. It's not good to have a patchwork quilt of laws. It's such a simple thing to go buy a $50 Bluetooth device that plugs into your cigarette lighter, and then when you go from Highland Park to Evanston through Wilmette and Winnetka, everyone with their own ordinances, you don't have to hang up on your caller. You're talking hands-free on a $50 Bluetooth device and keeping your eyes on the road, not dialing, and potentially saving a human life. To me, that's what it's all about.
I'd just like to say there's very few times where you actually get to do something that really bugs you. And I got to tell you, it is very frustrating to be behind somebody who's swerving off the road with that hand to their head. And I feel like, for me, this is just a little personal thing where I get to actually do something about something that I think is unsafe and really bothers me. And I agree 100% with Alderman Waldeck, and it would be much better to have a uniform law for the state. But I just feel that it would be irresponsible in my mind to wait.
Well, the good news tonight is there's only 7 aldermen and not 8. So you're off the hook now.
We might have
Could have said that about 2 or 3 other
I
times.
know. You know, I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but this is about safety. It's not about revenue. And in the report in our packet tonight, under the section of enforcement, it specifically calls out that the police department will not be out seeking specific violations for this, but instead will piggyback application with other violations. So I'm terribly comfortable and think it's very important that we as a council support this. As Mike has said often, you know, if we can save one life or one injury or one incident by doing this, then we've done something really important. And so often we sit up here, we spend a lot of time dealing with things that maybe aren't as important. This is very important, and I'm very much supportive of it.
Yeah, and the only other comment I would add is I think Bob is correct in the fact that what's happening in Springfield right now is they've got a very short amount of time to get through the end of the month, and you know, on that big agenda is really pensions and many billions of dollars items that they're trying to wrestle with. So more than likely, this probably, in my opinion, wouldn't get out of the Senate by the end of May, though it may come up again in September or in the fall veto, which is what, October. So. So if we did anything here and we passed it September 1, we may just be ahead of the game in the state, and we can always re-amend any language to conform with what the state may pass at some time later this year. So in that regard, I think it still makes sense for us to continue to look at this and see where we go with it. So saying that, I would entertain a motion. We have a motion on the floor right now, and I didn't hear a second, though. Did we have a second?
I'll second.
Is there a specific date?
That was with the September 1.
Yes.
September 1 implementation. Roll call vote, please.
Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck.
Nay.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Schoenheider.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Nay.
Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
Alderman Adelman.
Aye.
5 yeas, 2 nays, motion carries.
Thank you, Purdy. Our next item on the agenda this evening is new business. Do we have any other items, new business? No? Any other additional items for discussion this evening?
One question. When are we going to begin to see something on the hospital?
There you go.
If you watch TV tomorrow night, you can see the Plan Commission
Tomorrow
meeting.
night.
Depending on if the Plan
Officially as city council.
If the Plan Commission acts tomorrow evening, and I believe they do have a motion before them to take action, so if they do, it'll probably be at your June 19th agenda.
Thank you.
No other items for discussion?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Right. Finally.
Aye.